All right, Harmless Dave here talking about, Ukraine, Russia, the media. This is, folks, all right, let me get to the point here. What Vladimir Putin is doing is horrific, absolutely horrific, and everybody should say, enough, stop doing this, because it's gone beyond just hitting military targets. At least some of the stuff I've seen, and believe me, I've watched a lot of the other side. And the other side tends to keep running this stuff on Donbass and how that all went down. But how much pain are you going to inflict? Well, they're going to inflict enough pain to take the country over. They're hitting military targets. They're taking over shipping lanes, seaports, and they're there for the long haul. This is not something that they didn't think through. Now, with that said, again, remember what I said at the beginning, this is horrific. Putin needs to stop this. These are most likely war crimes. I think they are. I think they're war crimes, what Putin is doing. However, again, there are two sides to this story. The Russians were begging for someone to take notice of what's been going on in the Donbass region since 2015, at least 2014, 2015. They sign a treaty and they expect their little skirmish there between, the eastern part of the country and the western part to stop and to let these people live in peace. And I've seen a ton of real footage where, schools are being shelled. And even now, in fact, it's ramped up because they're taking out their frustrations on these people who live. And it's not coming from Russia, obviously. It's coming from Kiev and, this guy Zelensky, who is supposedly the greatest man who's ever lived. Think of how corrupt Ukraine is with all the Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, and the money laundering, Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton. I mean, this country has been a way to essentially get rich by making promises, and it's very mafia based. Now, some people say Russia's like that too. It's very mafia based. I don't know if it's because of all this similar lineage, but I'm thinking, if I'm a foreign policy diplomat and I'm saying the best way right now, this is what I would say, the best way is to not continue to poke this bear. But it's hard to watch, I understand. And people are running around saying, do something to stop it. You've got to stop it. Nobody wants to go into that airspace and tangle with Russia. And think of what that might mean. That would be, I think we're already into World War III, but it's how quickly does it escalate? And there would be one incident, a flashpoint incident like that, not necessarily a false flag, or it could be a false flag. Our government would be stupid enough to do something that makes it look like, I don't know, Russia thought that an American fighter jet had flown into that airspace and was provoking the Russian military. They would do that. I know they would do it. This is going to become a game of just almost like hologram warfare or something. It's just, the technology is beyond what we can imagine, especially at the military level. So anything is possible. Hallucinations are possible, right? I thought I saw an American fighter plane, but I didn't. So I shot down something else. Boom. And there is your international incident. And then the other countries, which were about to kind of walk away and let this just play itself out, those other countries decide we can no longer just let Vladimir Putin do this stuff unchecked. And thus, full-blown World War III. The economic sanctions, let me say this again, keep in mind what I said at the beginning. Putin is a thug. Putin is doing stuff that he shouldn't be doing. he can moralize it and justify it, and I can too. I can say this is why he's doing it. However, if you're killing innocent people, right? Innocent in the sense that they didn't provoke you guys. Maybe they violated your treaty. Maybe they're mistreating people. I mean, there are countries that mistreat people all over the world. And there's only so much you can do. I know Russia has a sense of national pride, and they look at maybe the morals of these people. And this is a factor. I've heard this over and over again, that Putin thinks they're basically drug, addicted pedophiles or something like that. And so that's his excuse. And believe me, there are plenty of those here in the United States, and we're not going to war. Maybe, I'm sorry, I'm not even going to suggest, as much as I hate that, that's a law enforcement issue and not a military exercise. But Putin has decided this is what he wants to do. But gas prices in my state today went up 30 cents overnight. 379. They were 349 yesterday, and now they're all 37, pretty much in lockstep. So you're cutting off Russia. You don't have, and this is what happens with this green energy thing, and you don't have a backup plan. How stupid is this, right? You want to sell me on this product? Then you know what? I shouldn't have to worry about pipelines and who's going to supply us with imported oil. It was far better when we had our own supply. And I don't care if you're left, right, center, up, back, down, whatever. You got to admit that it would be better if your community, I mean, not the Koch brothers, by the way. I'm not saying the Koch brothers should own it. No, somebody made a comment about the Koch brothers. Look, all I know is it's kind of like the blind man when Jesus saw the blind man's like, he goes to his friends and he says, look, this guy, I met him, he healed me. Before I couldn't see. All I know now is I can see. All I know is that, what, a year and a half ago, gas was like $1.92 a gallon where I live. Now it's approaching $4 a gallon. That's going to affect so many. It's going to affect, we already had inflation. Now you're going to have transportation costs on top of the inflation, which is going to cause more inflation and more supply chain issues. Folks, this is the perfect storm. And with all of these sanctions on Russia, this is like economic warfare, economic terrorism, to the degree where Russia can't even trade within themselves. They can't do transactions. People can't get to their money. People are having difficulty with, say, getting money to relatives somewhere in another country who depend on them. This is nuts. Again, even if you hate Putin, the Russian citizens, the Russian people did not do this. Now, of course, if you're sympathetic to Putin or don't condemn Putin, you're going to get banned. RT America, by the way, is off the air. It's done. They pulled the plug on it, I think, yesterday. I was watching it, and then it literally just disappeared in real time. It was just gone. And I'm like, wow. Now, whether you think it's propaganda or not, is banning a whole television network, is that the American way? Is that what Americans do now, is they just ban stuff that they disagree with? Yes, obviously. President Trump's Twitter account, we know about that one. That was a big one. And many others, all those doctors who had really good advice and really good remedies and just information, they all got banned. I mean, how much more of this should we take before we think to ourselves, something is just intrinsically wrong with our so-called freedom of speech, because it's gone. Now, again, it's propaganda. I will say it is. I mean, they put out stories that basically try to refute what everybody in the West is saying. But I want all the information, and then let me make a decision, right? Let me think for myself. I know it's difficult these days because you need an expert to think for you. And all of the so-called experts in the news media are all thinking the same way. All I can tell you, folks, is that This is economic war against Russia. It's going to do as much damage to our economy as any other economy, including probably the Russian economy. Maybe they'll suffer a little bit more, but this is going to have a ripple effect because this is the new world order. This is what we've created. We rely on other countries for things like, fuel and then food. Like they're a huge, huge producer of wheat. And yet now that's been cut off. And who gets a lot of the wheat to survive? The third world. Third world. During COVID, there's no question that people in the third world suffered because people all over were losing their jobs. And so they didn't have resources. So they would go to food banks and they would, basically taking all of those resources that were normally going to go to third world countries and needy peoples all over the world. And that's drying up. See, to me, this leads me down this path where I start to think that this is all just the next step in a plan. They knew that the tripwire with Russia would eventually go, and they knew what Russia would do. And Russia took the bait because Russia cares about Russia, right? Where America doesn't care about America anymore. We care about how other countries interact with America so we can get whatever they have. But now we're going to suffer because that's how we built our economy over the last 40 years, 30 to 40 years. And it's disgusting. It's because we don't make anything. We're not self-sufficient. And again, kind of like a prepper, America should have been prepping for this for decades. And now, because we're so reliant on everybody else, including China, by the way, and they play into this too. China, Russia, they play into this. They're going to be buddies now because basically we force one of them into the arms of another one. And I'm actually more concerned long-term about China because yes, Russia is authoritarian. China is totalitarian, which is far worse. And so you have to pick your poison. It's like Democrats versus Republicans, like who's worse? Anyway, I know who's worse in that argument. Although when you listen to Lindsey Graham, you think to yourself, I haven't heard any Democrats calling for assassination attempts. I don't know. I mean, the whole thing is just upside down and bass backwards, and we're living through it. We're watching it unfold in real time, and it is scary. All I can say to wrap up is stupid move to isolate Russia more and more. They'll collapse if we keep doing it, which is going to cause a domino effect because they have so many natural resources that all of Europe depend on, and even the United States, thanks to our stupid energy policy, which all needs to be revoked. And I don't care if people, have to admit that Donald Trump is right. Don't even talk about Trump. Just say, this is what we need to do. This is what we need to do. Maybe Trump was right. So what? I think our survival is more important than what tribe gets credit for what. Anyway, that's my video. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit the bell for notifications. $1 a month over on Patreon. I'll try to get to your comments. No guarantee. I'm just stretched thin between the two channels, but I appreciate your support here, and we'll see you soon.